Hello. In a previous video I showed you how to make this simple service business website using the Genesis framework and the sample theme. In this video I want to show you some more of the settings. So first of all I'm going to look at the customizer. So in the top bar here you can see customize. Now click site identity. You can either type in the name of your website. Now what I've actually done, I've used an image logo. You can upload the logo here. But if you look at the size of the logo, you've got an option here for changing the size of the logo. Now the logo image I've used, this looks like a text, but it's actually an image that I uploaded. If I change that to 700, which is the recommended size for the logo, it's a lot bigger. So make your image, when you add your logo, it tells you here the logo dimensions are 700 by 120, but after uploading the logo, if you change the logo size here, now I'm making this just 150 wide, and the reason for that is when we're using a mobile phone, now the logo will sit at the side of the menu. If you make the logo bigger, say 300, 350, the menu has slipped underneath. So bear in mind you'll need a very small logo if you want the menu to sit at the side of the logo. Publish that. Go back to the customizer. Now we've got colour options. I'll go back to the full screen image. We've got colour options. Now in the colours tab you can change the colour of links here, and there's also an accent colour. Now that gets confusing because you've got buttons that are made in the Genesis Blocks plugin, and so the buttons you've made in Genesis Blocks plugin have got their own settings in Genesis Blocks, but the link colour will work. When you change this, change the colour of the links. Menus, you can actually build menus in here. Now I don't do that. I use the dashboard to build menus, but if you want to, you can make menus in the customizer. Widgets are the same. You can use widgets here, but if you look, it says there are two other widget areas that are not shown here. So I always go to widgets via the dashboard. Homepage settings. This is the page that you want to use as your home page and to use as your blog page. These are standard WordPress settings. Now, theme settings. This is the one that has most of the settings for this particular theme. Now, updates, you just put in your email address there and it will just email you when there's a new version of Genesis. If you want to do that, you don't have to. Site layout. The site layout tab lets you choose a site-wide option for your sidebar. If you want to have a sidebar or you want full width content, so you can have sidebar or no sidebar. You can have a sidebar on the left or a sidebar on the right, or you can have no sidebar. And the option you choose here will set that setting for the full site. When you make an individual page or post, there's another setting I'll show you for each individual page or post. So you set the site-wide settings here, and you can also customize them per page or per post as you make the page or post. Breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs you can turn on individually for single posts, or this is the post page is the blog page. There's several options. I usually turn breadcrumbs on for single posts. Comments and trackbacks. You can turn comments on or off here. If you make posts before you set the settings here, the posts that you've made or the pages you've made might have comments enabled. You'd have to go to the individual posts or page to disable the comments if that's the case. But here you can choose the standard settings are enabled on posts but not on pages. It's up to you. Trackbacks are a bit of an old-fashioned idea now where your blog could communicate with other blogs. But you might choose to turn posts on or off. I turn trackbacks off. If you want to turn comments on, just enable them. You can then enable and disable comments on individual posts as and when you make them. Singular content. These options affect individual blog posts or pages. Now, meter is the text you see above and below posts or pages. So if we went to this post, this is the entry meter above the content. So this bit here above the content is this. So if we remove that, it's disappeared. Paste it back in again. And there's meter below the post. So if we remove this, the filed under category has disappeared. I'll paste it back and that category information will reappear. Now, there are a lot of shortcodes you can use, and if you click the link, it'll take you to a page telling you about the shortcodes. And the shortcodes do all sorts of things automatically. These are all kinds of shortcodes you can use. It's a long page with a lot of information and a lot of shortcodes. So if you're interested in adding some more information above or below your post, read up. And you can also show featured images on posts or pages. You can set that site-wide setting here. So if you want to show featured images at the top of your blog post or pages, you can. On some themes, that makes a really nice difference. On this particular theme, I don't see any real benefit in showing your featured images above the post. Content archives, that's how the blog page will appear. And if we go to the blog page, now if you look, this is showing excerpts, which is just a bit of each post, which makes it easier to read through. But if we change that excerpts to entry content, it'll show the whole post, which is quite a lot to I've added a content limit. I have to change the content limit. And now it's showing the full post. On the blog page will show the full post for every post, which is a bit overwhelming, I think. So I change that entry content to excerpts, and then I choose the amount of text to show. So that's 150 characters. So now you can scroll through it much more easily. You can also choose the things like featured image size and to display or hide the featured image. This pagination, when you get to the bottom of the list of blog posts, if there were more blog posts, you could have different styles of next buttons. One is a button and one is text. So try that and see what you think. The footer. Now this is not the footer, this is the footer credits. If you have a look here, down at the bottom, there's what they call the footer credits. And you can change this with either plain text or more shortcodes. So you can, if you just remove that, if you watch the copyright section at the bottom, it's gone. Now, you can either paste in plain text or you can use shortcodes. If you want to use shortcodes, click this link and it will take you to a page that explains about all the shortcodes that are available. Header and footer scripts. If you use Google Analytics, you want to paste your code in here. Now you can paste your code in here, which will work site-wide, or you can paste code into individual pages. So this is the place where you paste Google Analytics code into your site-wide for the whole site. Click back to go back. Then we've got SEO settings. Now, if you're using Yoast SEO, they will override these settings. I would only change these if you know what you're doing. Otherwise, you can just leave them as they are and you should be perfectly okay. But if you know a lot about SEO, you can change these, which are SEO settings just for Genesis. And this is additional CSS, which is available in all WordPress websites. And if you want to add your own CSS code, you can add it in here. And don't forget to click the Publish button to save any changes. Now I'll close the customizer. And I mentioned a couple of other settings there that are in the dashboard. So if we go to the dashboard, I prefer to go to the widgets settings via the dashboard. So if you go to dashboard, appearance, widgets, there are more options here than there are in the customizer. And the widgets are things like your sidebar, footers. There's an after entry widget, and the after entry widget displays after blog posts. So the text in your blog post, after the text in that blog post will display whatever you put in this after entry widget. You've got 3 footers, footer 1, 2 and 3. I've used the text widget in the footers, and you can put things in the sidebar. And if you haven't used widgets before, you can drag widgets into widget areas, or if you click the button, it'll give you the option of where you want to put the widget. And there are a lot of widgets. If you install plugins on your website, there's probably more widgets than this. But these are the widgets, and you put widgets into widget areas such as the sidebar or the footer. Now, menus, if you go to appearance, menus, I build my menus using this dedicated menus panel because this has got more options. It's easier to use than the options in the customizer. There's a lot more space available. It's not as confusing and it's not as cramped. So this is the way I do it. I go to appearance, menus. Now another thing I want to show you is users. So if you're in the dashboard, if your site has got several users, each user has a user profile. So if we go to users profile, we can scroll down and you can add biographical information about yourself. This picture, if you were using your email address with a Gravatar, if you've set up a Gravatar, there's a link here actually. If you want to know what Gravatar is, click the link and you can make your image appear in the biographical information. There's also author archive settings. Now this is a bit confusing at first because you've got the author archive settings and you've got the user biographical information. And just practice a bit so you get to understand which is which. And what you can do, you can turn on and off the author box. So you can have an author box on posts and an author box on the archives, which is a bit like a blog page for all the posts made by this author. And you can turn them on or off here. You might choose to turn on just one. You might choose to turn on the author box just on posts or just on archives. Or you might turn them both off or both on. It's up to you. And that's in users profile. Right, now we'll look at a post and I'll explain about the different sidebar options. So, first of all, I'll use a blog post because that's easier to understand. And I added with this one. Now, most of these, they don't have a sidebar. Sidebars really are a thing of the past because so many people use mobile phones and so they can't see the sidebar. This is the biographical information I was telling you about earlier. Now, there's no sidebar there. But I have added a sidebar on one of the posts to show you. Now this one, I've added a sidebar. The blue box is an image. I made that using a graphics program. And then I've added some information here and a search box. Now you can turn that on or off per post or page. So if we edit the post, Now there are several things you need to be careful with here. You've got post and block. There's no block active, so you only see the block settings if a block is active, and they change depending on which block is active. So you've got post and block, and you've got the WordPress settings and Genesis settings. So there's 4 things to remember: WordPress settings, Genesis settings, and you've got post settings and block settings. Now, to add or remove the sidebars just for this particular post, I need to go to the Genesis settings, and we've got this select layout. So if I wanted to add the sidebar to this one, I can add the sidebar content primary sidebar. So I'll give them the content at one side and the sidebar at the other. There's lots of other settings in here that are useful. You can hide things like the breadcrumbs, and you can hide the featured image. You can hide the footer widgets, so the footer would disappear. This custom class, if you know about CSS, you can add custom classes in here which will target just this particular post. Now I'll show you a page, because Page has got a couple of extra settings. So if I edit this page, I'm in the Genesis tab, not the WordPress settings, the Genesis settings. And you see I've ticked hide title. This is the title. And if you don't hide the title, it will appear above this fancy hero header. And you don't want that to happen. So click hide title. I showed you that in the previous video, but it's worth mentioning again. Now, if you want to turn comment on or off for this particular post or this particular page, you can do that here. So this one, discussion, allow comments in the WordPress settings, will override your previous settings that you did site-wide via the customizer. And this is the featured image box. You can add your featured image there. I don't recommend adding featured images on the Genesis sample theme. I don't think there's any point. Some themes it makes a really big difference, but not on this one. Now if we scroll to the bottom of any page or post, you've got some more options. If you're not using a plugin like Yoast SEO, you can actually do some of the SEO settings here. Now, if you install Yoast, it will override these SEO settings. And I don't really see any point not installing Yoast. It's such a good plugin. If you want to improve your SEO, use Yoast, and that will override these, which you'll find at the bottom underneath any post or page you make in Genesis. Now, I don't need to use them because I'm going to use Yoast, so I'll close that. And these are header and footer scripts which you would use for things like Google Analytics. Now, these are just for this specific page. In the customizer, we did site-wide settings for the header scripts and footer scripts. These are just for this specific page. So that's an option if you want to do that. If you do make any changes, don't forget to click the update button. Now before I view the page, I just want to remind you, the important points are, there's the WordPress settings. We're in the post editor, by the way. So what we need to know, when you edit a page or you edit a post, there are 4 important things. There's the WordPress settings, there's the Genesis settings, And you've got, in the WordPress settings, you've got page settings and block settings. So be careful which of these two tabs you tick. The page settings and block settings. Now, if you combine what I've shown you in this video and the previous video I showed you with Genesis blocks, so there's the Genesis sample theme and Genesis blocks. If you learn how to use the Genesis blocks plugin, you can make really good looking page layouts in literally minutes. It is good. It's simple, but it's more than powerful enough for what most small business owners need. So learn how to use the Genesis sample theme, the Genesis blocks plugin, and you can build your own good looking professional website fast. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.